Hello students, welcome to my live teaching learning session of MMPC 016 International Business Management. Today is second session of this paper. In previous session, we have discussed about what is the meaning of international business management and what is the difference between domestic trade and international trade and what is the main process to involve in this international businesses. In today's session, we will discuss about Unit 2, Block 1, Globalization and Evolving Paradigm. Because you know that at present, globalization is a very important concept and we are living in globalized world. And in present or modern era, globalization is very important concept also. So in today's session, we will discuss about globalization and evolving paradigm. So what is the meaning of globalization? We can define this globalization. Globalization is a system of interaction among the countries of the world in order to develop the global economy. At present, we all are living in globalized world. Globalization refers to a process in which we can increase the integral relationship with rest of the world. So globalization is the system of interaction among the countries of the world in order to develop the global economy. It refers to the integration of economics and societies all over the world. And it involves technological, economic, political, and cultural exchanges made possible largely by advances in communication, transportation, and infrastructure. In international business management, when we are doing business activities internationally, when we are expanding our business activities not only in domestic country, we are expanding our business activities in globally or all over the world level, then we must have to understand this concept of globalization, because globalization, how it helps in international businesses and what are the main impact of globalization and how we can say that is it useful or advantageous for us, or it gives some negative impact also. You know that each and everything has some pros and cons, same as globalization has also some pros and cons. But what advantages globalization we can, from this process we can take, and what disadvantages we have to face while adopting this globalization. So globalization is the system of interaction among the countries of the world in order to develop the global economy, and it is the integral relationship with the rest of the world, and it involves all the changes, all the things like technological, social, cultural, political, and all things we can exchange with rest of the world, largely advanced in communication, transportation, and infrastructure. And next is globalization has different dimensions, different aspects. We can globalized in economic way we can improve our integral relationship with all over the world in all these aspects like economic aspect, environmental aspect, religious, ideological, social, military, political, cultural. All these are the different aspects or different dimensions of globalization. Number one is globalization is the process in which we can link up our economy with rest of the world. The linking of nations through trade, information, technologies, and communication. If we are linking our economy with rest of the world by doing trade, getting informations, taking advantages of their improved technologies or advanced technologies or modern technologies, and adopting their communication system technologies and improving all these things with the help of rest of the world, that is called globalization. This often involves increased integration of different societies. So globalization means link up the economy with rest of the world and with other nations. And how we can link up our economy with rest of the world? Through trade, information, technologies and communication, which are the various dimensions of globalization. Next is globalization. These different things are included in globalization system. Number one is internet. At present, we all are interconnected with each and everyone with internet facilities. Number two is transportation cost and speed of transportation. If we want to decrease the transportation cost and we want to increase the speed of transport, that can be possible only with the help of this globalization. End of Cold War. You know that the end of Cold War, mainly in 1990s. At the time of 1990s, that time period is known as the end of Cold War, and India adopted this globalization in 1991 during new economic policy when government adopted the system LPG. L is liberalization, P is privatization, and G is globalization. So at the end of Cold War during 1990s, India adopted this globalization in 1991 in new economic policy era. Now next is global problems. We can find the solutions of global problems and those problems from which most of the countries or almost all the countries are suffering from that problem. We can find the solution with the help of global level and global problems like climate change, migration. These are global problems which are related with globalization. And next is liberalization. Liberalization means open up the economy for rest of the world. Because at present, no one economy is closed. At present, all the economies are open economies. All economies are doing trade with rest of the world. All economies have relationship with rest of the world. And if we are opening our economy not only for goods and only for trade, we are opening our economy for taking foreign direct investment. If investment flow is possible freely with rest of the world, if labor flow is possible freely, and if all the cultural flow, goods flow, services flow, each and every flow, if we are opening our economy for rest of the world, they can also enter in our country, and we can also hire their services. We can also get advantages from those nations who are well developed in different areas or aspects. We can get advantages from that. So all these processes are included in globalization. So globalization has different aspects like internet. uh, at Through internet we can connected with each and every person, each and every country, with the help of this globalization process. So these are different aspects, like through globalization, how globalization and economy can be possible through internet. It may decrease the transportation cost and speed of transportation. We can increase with the help of globalization, and it started mainly after the end of Cold War in India, and global problems was. Most of the countries are suffering from these problems like climate and migration, and the solution, to find out the solution of this global problem, we have to find out the solution globally, not at particular or any individual country level. And liberalization means to open up the economy for rest of the world. That is, all things are included in globalization. Now next is, globalization means interdependence with rest of the world. How our economy can be interdependent? You know that no one is independent, and we can try for self-dependent, but we are not fully independent. After getting independence in 1947, we are still dependent for some goods and services, and for other technological advancement on other countries. So globalization is the process in which interdependence, interconnectivity, interlinked with the rest of the world, all these things can be possible only with the help of globalization. So in globalization, here different how all the economies are interdependent on each other. For example, here like different aspects of this, like accountability. First of all, globalization means integration of economies, or improving the integral relationship with rest of the world. Next is, that all over the world, some countries are very highly developed countries, and some are very least developed countries, and some are moderate or middle income group countries. So there may be inequality or equality, and communication system is not very much developed in least developed countries. So least developed countries or developing countries are dependent on developed countries, and for some other things, developed countries are also dependent on developing or least developed countries. In this way, we can say that all countries are interdependent on each other, interlinked with each other. They are not fully independent. They are interdependent on each and every country for various things like equality, inequality, communication system. If we want to improve our communication system, then we must have to depend on developed countries, and to get the recognition, and trade versus aid, outsourcing. This outsourcing also can be possible with the help of this globalization. And brand loyalty, if you want to improve your brand loyalty not only in your domestic country, in all over the world, then this globalization or international businesses are also included in this globalization, are also dependent on globalization system. And exploitation also possible. It has some negative impact of globalization. Some developed countries can exploit or extract most of the natural resources from least developed countries for getting more advantages from that. So at the cost of developed countries can develop more. So this is called exploitation. It also can be possible while adopting this system globalization. And poverty, that some countries are very poor. They are still dependent for on other countries for food and for their basic requirements, for basic needs. And at present, climate is changing, environmental degradation is happening. So the to solve this climate change and environmental degradation problem, we have to take initiative globally, not at individual level. Monopoly power. Some countries have monopoly power. Those who have higher income grouped countries, or highly who falls in highly income grouped countries. And capitalism, that developed countries have capitalistic economic system in which there is a private ownership of all the means of production, and their main aim is to earn maximum profit. And if we want to do free trade without any restrictions, without any imposition of tariffs and quotas like this, that can be possible only with the help of globalization. And we can use modern technologies and modern equipments and the internet. Through this internet facility, we can be connected with other countries, people, and other countries or rest of the world. And at present, the whole world is shrinking. It means globalization. We can say that if all whole world under a single umbrella, whole world is lie under a single umbrella. That concept is called globalization. So this is the different things or different aspects, so that we can say that globalization means interdependence. So many things and so many problems which exist in developing countries or in least developed countries, they are dependent on developed countries. And for some other things, developed countries are also dependent on least developed and developing countries. So globalization is interdependence in between of all the countries, either they are developed or developing or underdeveloped countries. Now next is types of globalization. How many types of globalization we can see all over the world? You know that globalization is the process by which businesses, ideas, and cultures spread across the world, creating interconnectedness and interdependence among nations, driven by advances in technology and communication. It leads to the blending and exchange of resources, products, and culture. So globalization means integral relationship with rest of the world, in which not only we can allow for doing trade of goods and services only. It is the process by which businesses, ideas, and culture spread across the world, creating interconnectedness and interdependence among nations. And there are different types of globalization. And how many types of globalization? We can talk about different types of globalization. That is social globalization. Social globalization means to improve the relationship with rest of the world. And technological globalization, in which we can use those technologies which mainly developed by developed countries or advanced countries, and they have, because they have more financial resources, more capital resources, they have more advanced techniques. So through globalization we can use that type of technology which we can't develop, or we can't use we can't make in our country. So that type of globalization is called technological globalization. Next is financial globalization. Financial globalization, in which financial movement, financial flow can be possible from one country to another country. And economic globalization means where trade and goods and services flow can be easily possible from one nation to another nation. Political globalization means where the political ideas, political thoughts, political beliefs can be easily transferred from one country to another country. Cultural globalization means where the cultural culture of one country can move from another country. So that is called cultural globalization. Ecological globalization is that type of globalization in which our environment, we can use those technologies which are eco-friendly, which can make our environment, we can protect, which can protect our environment from degradation or any hazards things. That is called ecological globalization. And sociological globalization is that globalization in which we can improve our society to see the other countries living style of the society or country people. So that is called sociological, the way of living, the way of living, and how their standard of living can improve. Like in developed countries, we know that their living standard remains always higher than least developed countries. So, sociological globalization, how different societies live in different ethical groups or in different regions. So, all these things are included in the various types of globalization. So these are different types like social globalization, technological globalization, financial globalization, economic globalization, political globalization, cultural globalization, ecological globalization, and sociological globalization. So these are different types of globalization through which we can take advantages by adopting this globalization process. Now, what is the history of globalization or how this concept originated? The word globalization has been used by economists since 1981. The concept only became popular in the later half of the 1990s or at the end of Cold War. The first era of globalization in the fullest sense during the 19th century. Rapid growth of trade between the European imperial powers and the European colonies and the United States. So, in the first era of globalization during the 19th century, which improved the trade between the European imperial powers, imperial European colonies, and the United States. After World War II, globalization was restarted, driven by major advances in technology, which led to lower trading cost. So, this word globalization has been firstly used by economics since 1981, but it get popularity in the later half of the 1990s or at the end of Cold War. Now, the term globalization was not used in economical sense until the 1980s. The integration of economies was seen as a slow process until after World War II. The Bretton Woods Agreement created the International Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and the GATT. GATT is General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. GATT was formed in 1947. At that time, 23 countries were the member countries of GATT, and India was the founder member of GATT. But in 1995, the name of GATT converted in WTO, World Trade Organization, because World Trade Organization is a broader term and GATT we can study about in narrow sense, but GATT and WTO, the main aspect or the main focuses on of GATT and WTO is on improving the relationship of different countries while doing international trade of goods and services. The International Trade Organization failed 1950s and was disbanded. WTO was created. WTO is World Trade Organization, was created and became an official trade governing body on January 1st, 1995. General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs had given different rules and terms and conditions of international trade, but WTO is a broader aspect. It covers all types of trade like agriculture trades, services trade, and manufactured items trade, intellectual property rights trade, and mm, investment, financial investment, different types of investment, all things are included in WTO, and it decides the terms and condition of in between of member among the different countries who are the member of WTO, so that international trade can run smoothly among different nations of the world. Next is globalization between the pre-modern periods to modern periods. The Industrial Revolution in the 19th century was one of the major periods in the history of globalization. Due to the Industrial Revolution, there was a significant increase in the quantity and quality in the of the products. This led to higher exports and better trade and business relations. So at the time of Industrial Revolution in 19th century, that was one of the most or major period in the history of globalization. And we know that Industrial Revolution firstly happened in which country? In England or Britain. Due to the Industrial Revolution, there was a significant increase in the quantity and quality of the product. When supply of goods and services increase at the time of Industrial Revolution, then the main problem was that how to allocate this abundant supply in different nations so that all surplus production can be utilized properly and producer can get maximum profit. Then this concept was originated. This led to higher exports and better trade and business relations. Due to better products and colonization, lots of countries across the world became the consumers of the European market because at that time European countries uh, was mainly in powers and they have colonized all the least developed countries or underdeveloped countries. So, due to better products and colonization, lots of countries across the whole world became the consumer of European products or European market. The phase of pre globalization perhaps came to an end after the First World War. So, this is the globalization period which lie in between of pre-modern period to modern period. At present, we are using all the multinational companies' product that is also in the process of through this process of globalization. We all use different products which are made in different countries. So international businesses also improve by the process of globalization. Now, this is the impact of globalization. What is the effect of globalization? Globalization has so many good effects and some bad effects also. Impact of globalization can be studied in different aspects. Number one is impact of globalization on religion and culture. Here, on religion and culture, spreading religion and culture is spreading, intermingling, mixture culture is mixing culture is at present in all the countries. Mixing culture we can see, and religious wars in some nations. Religious wars may be happen due to this erosion of culture or mixture of all these cultures. In agriculture sector, changing trends. At present, we can see effects of global warming and technological efficiency. Some has positive impact and some has negative impact on agriculture sector of this globalization process. And whole economy, how impact of globalization and how globalization affects the economy. Like at present, BPOs are increasing. BPOs are like business processing outsourcing are increasing, tourism is increasing, trade is increasing, banking services are increasing, competition is increasing, and labor laws are changing. So this is the almost positive impact on economy. Next is family values. At present, joint family converted in nuclear families or forms of family. You know that there are two types of families in which people maybe live in joint family system or maybe live in nuclear family system. So impact of globalization, most of the joint families are converting into nuclear families for uh, through migration and getting more salaries and more payments. That's why, and the cost of living become very costly. That's why joint family is converting into nuclear families. Next is environment, impact of globalization on environment. At present, pollution, emission, pollutant emissions, deforestation is going on, and dams and canals are increasing, mining process is increasing. So, on environment aspect, if we study about the impact of globalization on environment, so we can see here that there is a negative impact of globalization on environment. Now, next is social and health. Social and health. In this, there is a division in between of rich and poor. At present, whole world is divided into three categories. One is high income grouped countries, second is middle income countries, and third is poor or lower income countries. It means globalization has divided the whole world in between of two categories. One is rich and other is poor. And impact on old people, impact on women, impact on children, human trafficking is also increasing. Inequality is increasing. Inequality or unequal distribution of income and wealth is increasing. Society is dividing in two categories, that is, rich and poor, or haves and haves not. Global diseases are also increasing. Educational empowerment can be possible only with the help of globalization, and medical enhancement is also improving. So there is some positive impact and some negative impact of globalization in all over the world and in different aspects like religion and culture, agriculture, economy, social and health, environment, and family values. These are the different dimensions of impact of globalization. Next is trade, capital, information, and migration. Now, trade, gross exports of goods and services as a percentage of GDP is 41% perception, but in reality, that is 29%. Here, perception is higher, but in reality, is data is showing very lower. So, gross exports of goods and services perception was 41%, but in reality, it is 29%. And capital, the flow of FDI or foreign direct investment as a percentage of gross fixed capital formation, its perception was 38%, but in reality, it is only 7%. Information, in information, the percentage of telephone calls, including calls over the internet that were international, its perception was 36%, but in reality, it is only 7%. And migration means the number of people living outside the country where they were born as a percentage of the overall population. Its perception was 30%, but in reality it is only 3%. So, this is the process of globalization in which we are increasing interdependence, we are increasing interconnectivity with rest of the world by doing through trade, capital, information, migration. We can adopt this globalization process, but here we see that the perception remains higher than reality. Next is the effect of globalization. What is the cultural impact of globalization? Websites such as YouTube connect people across the planet. As the world becomes more unified, diverse culture are being ignored. MNCs means multinational corporations can create a monoculture as they remove local competition and thereby force local firms to close. It means when we adopt this globalization system, then most of the developed countries' companies will come in or enter in developing nations through FDI or foreign direct investment, and MNCs can create a monoculture as they remove local competition because they are huge companies. They have huge capacity to invest, and they bring their own capital, they bring their own technologies in developing countries, and their uh, cost of production remains lower than local firms. That's why they remove local competition and they force local firms to close. So this is the cultural impact of globalization. Next is positive and negative effects of globalization. What are the positive and negative effects of globalization? Like any other process, there are positive and negative effects of globalization. With the rise of globalization, people exchange knowledge, connections, experiences, and innovations. Thus, there are a lot of scientific and cultural developments that lead to the rise of economic potential. However, globalization still does not help to reduce the level of poverty. It also spread inequality among different social groups. Surprisingly, globalization also leads to higher level of unemployment because globalization improves the technological advancement, and as well as technological advancement increases, employment level falls, so unemployment ratio will rise. So this is the negative impact of globalization on unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Globalization increase the level of poverty. It increases the gap in between of rich and poor. It increases the gap in between of developed and developing countries, and it also increases the level of unemployment. But it has some positive impact, like with the help of this globalization, people can exchange their knowledge, they can connect with others through internet, they can share their experiences, and they can innovate new things. Thus there is a lot of scientific and cultural development that lead to the rise of economic potential. All these things are showing that globalization has some positive impact, and poverty, inequality, increase in unemployment through this globalization are showing its negative impact. Next is causes of globalization. What are the main cause behind this globalization process? Number one is improved communication. The development of communication technologies such as internet, email, mobile phones have been vital to the growth of globalization because they help multinational corporations to operate throughout the world. The development of satellite TV channels such as Sky and CNN have also provided worldwide marketing avenues for the concept and product of products of globalization. These are different things, examples of improving communication system by using this internet, email, and CNN. This is the channel, TV channel, and through mobile phones and music, television. The development of this whole communication technologies such as internet, email, mobile phones have been vital to the growth of globalization because they help multinational corporations to operate throughout the world. The development of satellite TV channels such as Sky and CNN have also provided worldwide marketing avenues for the concept and product of globalization. Next is negative effects of globalization. Now, what are the various negative effects of globalization? Number one is loss of domestic industries. You know, multinational corporations who are a huge companies, they bring their own capital technologies in host country and start their business activities in host countries, and they decrease the they can they can remove the competition by removing local competitors because their cost of production remains lower because they produce in abundant quantity. When they produce in abundant quantity and by using modern technologies, by using advanced technologies, that's why their cost of production remains lower. So local competitor can't stand in front of big corporations, and in this way domestic industries loss we have to face. Number two is exploit human resources. They exploit human resources. They mainly start their business enterprises in those nations where labor is abundant and the cheap labor is available. For example, in India, here labor is abundant because India is at present most populated country in the world. So in India, where labor is abundant and job opportunities are not available here, that's why people are forcefully or not willingly, they uh, have to ready for doing less paid work, less paid jobs, and they are very cheap because in India cheap labor is available. So MNCs use this cheap labor to decrease their cost of production and to increase the sale all over the world. So they exploit human resources in least developed countries or underdeveloped countries. Decline in income, when they will pay less salary to the worker, then income level of the workforce will also decrease. And due to fall in income of the labor force, whole growth of the country will also decrease. Unemployment, because we know that most of the developed companies or MNCs, multinational corporations, mainly use modern or advanced technologies in which less manpower is required for their business enterprises. In this way, unemployment problem always exists due to this globalization. Next is transfer of natural resources. Most of the developed countries are extracting natural resources from less developed countries. For example, in Africa, we know that in African continent is rich in natural resources. They have abundant natural resources, but in African continent, they don't have modern technologies or physical capital formation to use all the available natural resources for their own country people benefits. That's why developed countries who have huge capital power, who have modern technologies, they are using their all available natural resources for their own benefit. So, by this globalization process, transfer of natural resources or natural resources are moving from least developed countries to most developed countries. Next is lead to commercial and political colonialism. You know that at present all countries are free. No one is colonized. But with the help of this globalization process, it leads to commercial and political colonialism. Globalization is increasing or widening the gap in between of rich and poor countries. It increasing the gap in between of rich and poor. Rich becomes more richer and poor becomes more poorer. And next negative impact is dominance of foreign institution. You know that foreign institution has dominant power or monopoly power. That's why they took that type of decision which is favorable to their own country and give impact negatively on the other least developed countries. These are negative effects of globalization. Next is different drivers of globalization. External industry globalization drivers. Number one is market drivers. Consist of but not limited to common customer needs and taste, global customer, their lifestyle and taste, plus global travel, global distributors and global brands, global marketing and advertisement message, emergence of lead countries in specific industries, and growth of international communication, technology, ICT. These are market drivers. And cost drivers consist of, but not limited to only this, which are mentioned here, like economies of scale. When business, when any business activity is expanding their business in large scale, then economies of scale plus learning curve effect also included in that, sourcing efficiencies and favorable logistic differences in countries' cost, accelerating technological innovations at a higher cost, and changing product life cycle. These are cost drivers. You know that with the help of this globalization, we can decrease the cost of production and improve the economies of scale and improve the efficiency of production, and we can change the product life cycle also. So these two are market drivers and cost drivers of globalization. These are external industry globalization drivers. Next is industrial globalization drivers in detail. You know that industry globalization potential. Here two drive four things are included here. Number one is cost driver, number two is market drivers, number three is government driver, and number four is competitive drivers. In case of market drivers, common here, first of all, companies studied about customers' need, customers' taste, preferences, and global customers, global channels, and transferable marketing system are all are included in market drivers. And in government drivers, favorable trade policies, competitive, compatible technical standards, common marketing regulations, all these things are included in government drivers. In competitive drivers, high exports, high imports, interdependence of countries, competitors from different countries, and globalized competitor, all these are included in competitive drivers. Next is cost drivers. When firm produces at a large scale, then economies of scale, like internal and external economies of scale, can be possible. Steep experiences curve, low transportation cost, differences in countries' cost, high product development cost, and need for technology transfer. So all these are industrial globalization drivers, and they are basically four drivers. One is market, next is cost, next is competitive, and last is government. And next is external industry globalization driver 2 may. In this, government drivers consist of, but not limited to only this, like reduction in tariffs. Tariffs are import duties, import tax, and other protective actions. Growth of compatible technical standards, uniform of marketing regulations, common marketing regulations, government owned customers and competitors, denationalization, deregulation, and open up the economy for rest of the world. Host government concerns, if managed well, leads to reduction in isolated economies. And in competitive drivers, number one is rising world trade level, high exports and high imports. New competitors are not restricted to developed economies because of born global firms, variety of countries, global network in many industries allow for global focus or interdependence on countries and globalized competitors increased foreign ownership among corporations and transferable competitive advantages. So these are four main industry globalization drivers. One is market, next is cost, third is government, and fourth is competitive. Next is drivers of globalization. It depends upon business needs and opportunities. What are the business needs? Businesses and business enterprises always lowering the cost of factors of production like labor, natural resources, and a larger market size to support efficient or economies of scale and justify large investment in research and development and product development, and it extended the product life cycle. And what opportunities are exist here? Growth of emerging nations, declining trade and investment barriers, common customer requirements, increasing demand for universal products. So these are different drivers of globalization's business needs and opportunities. Now we can conclude from today's session that in today's session we have discussed about globalization and its evolving paradigm. You know that globalization word is mainly uh, exist in India. This word is not very uh, old. In 1980 time period, this word was firstly used, and after in India, at the end of Cold War in 1991, India adopted this globalization process his in its new economic policy of July 1991, in which three major things adopted by Indian economy in this NEP, like liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And here, globalization in increases the integral relationship with rest of the world. So globalization is very necessary at in present time period, because at present without globalization we can't easily flow all types of goods and services to the rest of the world. Not only goods and services, we can flow investment, we can easily flow labor force, we can easily flow our culture to the rest of the world, and so many things can be, and people can be migrate from one country to another country. So all things can be possible only with the help of globalization. So globalization is helpful because it helps all countries involved by keeping peace, making money, and educating them on how other places and communities live live. So we can conclude from today's session that globalization has some positive and negative effects also, and it has different dimensions. But globalization is helpful because it helps all countries involved by keeping peace, by uh, giving solution to whole global at global level, solve all global problems at global level. And if all countries are living under a single umbrella, then they can easily understand their problems and they can provide solutions to their problems also. So it helps all countries involved by keeping peace, making money, and educating them on how other places and communities live. So in next session, we will discuss another thing which is related with international business management concept. And in today's session, we have covered globalization and its all evolving paradigm. Thank you.